can't stand Maximilian because he's everything that you're not. He doesn't have to give English lessons for 3 marks an hour. He's rich, and he knows about life. He doesn't read about it in books. He's suave, and he's divinely sexy. And he really appreciates a woman.
Oh, screw Maximilian!
I do.
So do I.
Hello, listening people.
Hello.
Hello, Bartek. How are you doing?
I'm doing well, Ryan Slewinski. How are you?
After watching a film with Michael York, I feel like I need to posh it up a bit. Do you ever, when you watch something, Bartek, and you see an actor or performer and they have such a grace, such a dignity, such an elegance, and you just feel like such a slob in comparison? You're just like, oh man, he walks around sounding like that, while I sound like this. Ugh.
I thought you were gonna say like, oh, don't you just want to imitate them? And I was gonna
Sure.
And I was gonna bring up the Scottish guy from that early Blackadder episode.
Oh, of course.
Like,
Or
yeah.
you can imitate them if you like. Oh, look, if you could sound like Michael York, that would be amazing. Every day you walk around being like, Austin.
It's a great, great voice. Spoiler alert for the movie. It's not shit, Austin.
It's not shit, Austin. Austin. But that's my mother. We are here.
It's like the one time he gets offended in the trilogy.
Yeah, of course.
Damn it, man, that's my mother, or something like that.
Of course he gets upset. It would be weird, but we are Spit and Polish, and we are here to present to you our podcasting series, Pictures Powwow, in which we talk about a movie that has come recommended. We have a cycle of recommendations in which 1 week it is Bartek who recommends a film, the week after that it is myself, and then after that it is you, the listening people. So if you have a film that you want us to check out, make sure to hit us up with a suggestion. We add it to the list of recommendations, and we eventually get around to watching and discussing it. This time, it is my recommendation. I picked a film for us to talk about, and we are talking about Cabaret. Cabaret, which is quite an iconic film, but maybe musical, maybe some people don't know what it is about. Bartek, if you had to give the listening people out there just a tad bit of the rundown of this, if you're trying to pitch this their way to watch, what would you say?
Yeah, this one would be an interesting one to do a short pitch for. You could talk about some of the events in the film, like who our main characters are, but then you can also talk about how it's kind of looking at the lives of a couple of different characters who are living in a very specific point in German history, and seeing how the setting is kind of devolving into, you know, what happens a little bit after the early 1930s Germany.
Yes, exactly it. It is a film that deals with so much, but it's super focused on individual characters. It's a movie that is set during early 1930s Berlin. Fascism is clearly on the rise, but it is in the background.
Yeah, those swastika fellows that make a few appearances.
Those
throughout.
Nazi bullies are at it, but we are underestimating their strength. But that is only something that is in the background.
Yeah.
We have moments where it spikes up, but this is a character-driven story about two individuals from very different worlds, very different points of views, who are together. They find friendship, they find romance, they find camaraderie, and things spiral out from there. It's actually a very difficult film to kind of summarize, but I would definitely say that everyone should watch this movie. It is a very acclaimed film. It's a very acclaimed stage show, and Cabaret is a film that I recommended because it has a certain reputation. It is a film that fits a certain thing that we said, which was this is the year of musicals, and I wanted to give a film that had some musical stuff in it, but also let's talk about what defines a musical as well, because as this film is, it does have songs, but the songs come and go, and they are explicitly a part of the universe. This isn't just a breaking out into song and dance randomly. And
Yeah, when reading up about the film, there were a lot of mentions about how all the musical numbers in this are diegetic, and I'm like, oh yeah, I didn't really consider that.
yeah, and they're not the typical musical numbers in which the songs specifically, all of them are telling us something about the character or pushing the narrative forward. Obviously they are, and most of them are tying in thematically, and there's one song in particular that's giving you the details of the time. But Cabaret, you should make sure everyone to watch it for yourself, because we are going to discuss it. We're going to get into more depth and more details of it. And as the one who recommended it, I do have a history with the film. I have seen it before, but only one time before. I saw it in early high school. It was something that was put on, just something. We weren't learning about it. It was just one of those times in which a teacher ran out of stuff to do, so they put on a movie, and Cabaret was the pick.
Interesting choice.
I think it was a history teacher, so it might be that type of thing. But
yeah, fair enough.
I mean, when I grew up, and I don't know if it was the same for you, because you and I have had movies in common that were played at school, whether they were for study or whether they weren't. But there were some movies that they would put on that you would be like, interesting choice for us to do at this age, or just as entertainment or as learning material. But
the body is learning material.
The body, or Rabbit Proof Fence is learning material, or
It's a big one.
They always used to play in geography class. The gods must be crazy, and there's just so many of these movies that are like interesting that you saw in school, and this was one. But I hadn't seen it again, and it's had a reputation. Like there's all of these different versions of it on stage, and Alan Cumming has done productions of it as, the head of the Cabaret, and there's images of him, and there's just so much going on. Liza Minnelli is very synonymous with this picture, and I like Michael York as an actor, but I hadn't seen him in too much, and this was one of the leading roles for him. Usually I've seen him as a secondary or supporting figure, and even in this, he's still a supporting figure to Liza Minnelli, but he's our point of view character.
Well, he's our male lead, at least.
Yeah, he's the audience surrogate at the very minimum. But I saw this, but I wanted to see it again.
So this was your second viewing?
This is my second viewing, and there's also a little bit of an interesting wrinkle to it as well that we both share, but I more so than you. I'm a big fan of the television series Babylon 5. I have a podcast with my wife Rachel in which we reviewed every single episode. We broke down the episodes. We do behind the scenes stuff. We talk about actors.
I was in 5 of them.
And Bartek was in several episodes. Michael York was in an episode of Babylon 5. And the thing that I learned from doing my own podcast was that Cabaret was a major touchstone point of for JMS, the showrunner of Babylon 5.
Oh, yeah?
Hence, Michael York was in an episode. He loves Cabaret, and there's a famous death scene of a certain character in Babylon 5 who gets killed, and it's intercut with a musical. With a song,
yeah,
and that was specifically a reference, or like
to
was
Cabaret,
inspired by Cabaret, which has a very similar scene, done differently, but very similar. But until having to sit down and watch it last night, I really didn't understand how much of an impact Cabaret had until I watched it last night, and I was like, wow, the way that this handles the small lives of people who are in the midst of something horrific going on, and yet they're clueless to it, yet they're aware of it. The series Babylon 5 really deals with fascism and how it encroaches upon us, and what do you do? And Cabaret, the way it handles it is very similar to how Babylon 5 did it on a 22 episode per season, 5 season long series level, but this does it in 2 hours. And just that, I just wanted to lay that out right now of like, I was a little bit wanting to recommend it to see how much of the DNA of this thing inspired or influenced or melded into a thing that I have a personal affinity towards. And I'll just say now, a lot more than I was anticipating.
Yeah, for a thing that's like the length of 3 episodes, it seems to have covered most of it.
Yeah, and you've seen Babylon 5 yourself, and we can talk only a little bit, but I don't know if it's just me, but like I could definitely see him like, oh yeah, this guy watched Cabaret.
Now that you mention it, yeah, I suppose you're right.
But what about yourself? How familiar are you with Cabaret?
Pretty much not at all. I'd always just assumed that, and I guess part of it is because they both begin with a C, that it was kind of similar to Chicago, where it's like, oh, it's like a glamorous, stylish musical. I didn't know that it was, based on the writings of someone who loosely went through similar events. I didn't know that it was set in the 30s and shows the rise of Nazism. I basically just thought it was, not to sound reductionist towards it or reducing it, but yeah, a bit more style over substance.
That I can understand that for sure as well. I remember that being kind of my impressions of Cabaret, of just like, oh, it's this period piece musical with a lead actress who's going to sing and dance, and what will it be? Something that, as an adult coming back to it, I was really taken aback by, in a good way. Like I was really drawn into it outside of how it deals with Nazism, but sexuality as well was something very much at the forefront of Cabaret's story, how it deals with the sexuality of its characters and the level of empathy, level of maturity that it goes into with that stuff, whilst also still not being afraid of chastising the characters for finding themselves in situations because of their sex drives and stuff. So
yeah, the film definitely like averted a lot of kind of tropes and cliches of like romance stuff. Like near the end of the film, like second last scene, we've got a scene of, getting to spoilers already. Characters had an abortion and the partner didn't know about it until just this moment. And the way that scene ends is a lot more tender than you would assume.
They handle it with grace and understanding, but there's still a conflict between them.
Absolutely, yeah. But it's not like, third act breakup kind of level of, tropiness.
But they also do break up.
They do, yeah.
And yet what we're saying is it doesn't go about it in what we often lament on this podcast, the very movie way of going through the motions. Cabaret, I was moved by it. I found myself tense throughout the entire thing. Something I truly adored about this was the editing. It was so quick. Lots of quick cuts, lots of nightmare-inducing close-up shots down below, looking up, especially when we're in the cabaret. You almost feel like you don't get a sense to, like, you get the ability to breathe through so many scenes of the movie. And it's not like that constantly, but
it's like the opening 4 or 5 minutes is all like pure cabaret.
Yeah, and it's not shot in a way that you would associate with, say, like Chicago or what you were talking about of that style of. With a musical like this, you're expecting the camera to be far back and we're getting all of these gorgeous numbers clearly shown to us. But in those first 5 to 10 minutes, you're getting all of these quick, cut, close up. And it's so much to take in. You're like, what am I looking at? But I think it benefits the movie. And overall, I found myself just wound up like a clock by this. It just wound me up emotionally. It wound me up with the music. I was just so on the wavelength of this that, I'm coming into this podcast and I'm talking about like, okay, I have to look at this through a critical lens. I'm going to have to do this. It's one of those times in which I must say that I walk out of this with no real negative criticisms. I'm like, this movie did everything it set out to do. And I don't know how it needed to. There's nothing it needed to improve with what it did from myself. I was just so on side with the movie, which is just a great compliment to it. That I've seen this before, but elements hadn't lingered as much as they could have. Hence, I wanted to revisit it. But I was just absolutely enamored with everything that this was getting at. The pacing of it, the tone of it, the way that they would interject musical numbers or these kind of direct-to-camera conversations with the host of the cabaret. Like, all of it was just completely on my wavelength when I watched it last night. Now, how did you feel about Cabaret, knowing not too much about it? Now, you have a DVD copy of it in your house.
Mm-hmm.
Yes, so I imagine your mum's maybe
No,
familiar
yeah.
with it, watched it.
Yeah, I haven't asked her if she's watched it or not, but yeah, this is her DVD.
So, what did you feel about Cabaret?
I also really enjoyed it. Yeah, walking in not knowing much, like obviously it was a lot more meaty than I was expecting. Very stylistic, yeah, in the first couple of minutes and throughout the film, but you know, as the film goes on and you get like less and less of the actual cabaret itself, you really start to see the world that this film is set in. You can start seeing how, you know, things are moving towards what we now know as Nazi Germany. Got some really great musical number not set in the cabaret that really, really highlights that. And yeah, I really, really loved our two leads.
There's just something so disarming about Cabaret because it's set in this wonderful location, these kooky characters who are talking a million miles per minute. Like, our main two are very different, where you got Michael York, stiff British man who's very stoic but also gentle, and you got Liza Minnelli, the American, who's chain smoking and just rambling off, and she's drinking and laughing, and she's changing moods all the time.
It's a very good odd couple.
It's a very good odd couple, and you've got this cabaret location in which it's just the, you know, gorgeous, you know, yet decadent and expressive. But once you leave that location, once you leave their apartment as well, once you leave the world of the cabaret they live in, it's just this unsettling nightmare. And you're like, oh, yes, this isn't just going to be a movie set in this location just because that's where cabarets were. No, it's going to be about this, but also it's not. It's this wonderful balancing act of it all. Now, the director of this, Bob Fosse, he also did All That Jazz, which is another big movie musical with quite a few people in it. But he's been involved in a movie we've done on the podcast before, which was How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying. He did not direct that, but he did do the choreography.
Mm-hmm. Okay.
Because he was a choreographer and then director and actor. He's been around the block. He's done many things. But we did How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, and our biggest compliment to that movie, other than the production design, was the choreography. We're like, there's a lot of great like dance numbers in this. And that was like our big like praise of a movie that we didn't find to be particularly notable in terms of its actual songs. But it's
I remember you didn't really remember any songs. I still remember some.
There's a few, but like it's those dance numbers. Like, yeah, now this is it. Now this is a movie that does not have that style, does not have that bombacity, yet it also has its own. So what did you think about this film's handling of its dances and songs and musicality, in which it is diegetic, in which it is there infrequently? It's not there constantly. It's just that, you know, there's stretches where you kind of forget that there's going to be a musical number, and then it will kind of come in again and be like, hello, I'm a mute. At least that was my reaction to it. What did you feel?
I felt it was well paced. Like it appeared enough that I remembered, like, this is a film where this is going to happen a few times. And again, like you said before, a lot of them are thematically relevant to the events of the film.
And how do you feel about those numbers? Did you have any favorites? Did you have any standout scenes or sequences or particular like visuals or moves that were implemented?
In general, and you know, this is going to be like the thing to say, but a lot of the MC's songs were really great. I really liked the one where he was in a threesome. Mm-hmm. That one had some really good choreography. Like they had the way the three actors like work together to, you know, like make little poses with like stretching around each other, and later on they bring out this very big blanket, and they really, really effectively, worked around this kind of restricting prop where, they're fooling around underneath and then they're occasionally like, peeking out and like pretending it's a dress while everyone's still underneath. And it's like, this is actually really, really cool. And another one later on, I think it's his like last or second last one, the one where he's with the monkey and he's singing, and this was a roller coaster of a song for me.
Oh,
it's like
yes.
he's singing if you just look at the words, just look at the lyrics, it's like a very sweet song about like, this is a woman that I love who, I see something in, people don't like her as much and, but she's the one for me. And then you have the visual gag of like, oh, they're dressed as like a little gorilla or something. And it's like, oh, that's the visuals are the joke. And then the final line of the song is this like, whoa, oh, this is dark kind of line where it's like, oh, you thought I was singing about a gorilla? No, this is a Jew.
Oh man, what a roller coaster ride of a sequence that was. I do agree. I was in love with Sally's first big number with the chair that she's flipping around on, and
Mine Hair, was it?
Yeah, and she's dancing around, and it's very interactive, and tone, like the tone of the song goes all over the place. Like it's really happy and upbeat and sad and it's just such a and of course the dancing is just phenomenal, and the visuals of her outfit and her hair with the chair and the silhouetting. Her hand gestures are always so big and wild and over the top. And
her dancing was noteworthy when a lot of the trivia was she was too good. She was trying to play a character that isn't good at dancing, but she's just amazing
too
at it.
good. Yeah, she's the daughter of Judy Garland, so of course she's going to be too good. I really was loving of that song. And the other one that is notable, of course, and this is what I want to talk about, because we've done a few musicals now, and modern one's from the past, one's from before this, one's from after this time.
We've done a couple from the 60s.
One's from different countries, of course, with Bollywood. But I honestly think, and maybe correct me if you feel differently, but I thought the way that the cinematography was used in this was the most, I guess, film-centric, because many musicals we have, like say with the Bollywood ones, they do have their glorious, like we put the camera back so you can see everything in a good way.
Yeah.
But there's a lot of close-ups and a lot of like implementations of the medium of film. And I'm saying this because one of the most effective numbers works because it's a movie, which is the Nazis song.
Yeah.
You know immediately he's a Nazi. You just know because of the blonde hair, blue eyes, and the collar. But
the color of his clothes, yeah.
But the camera pans down and you see the swastika.
It's like, show me the armband.
And then the cutting to reveal that there's more and more and more of them. And the editing added to the cacophony of this song that started out as serene and beautiful, and then through being a filmed piece became ever so threatening. And I feel like many numbers were elevated because of how this is much more of a film musical or a film version than just a musical in itself. And I feel like many of the other musicals we've covered still use the medium very well, like Repo did for sure, but many of them still feel like that kind of like, we're filming a stage show in a little bit of a way where we've got to show off how good they are at dancing. Like, we've got to show off Shah Rukh Khan's ribs, and his abs and stuff. Or we've got to show off, like in How to Succeed in Business Without Really Trying, that we actually do have like dozens of dancers doing all of this. But in this movie, I didn't feel like, for all of that idea of like the visual appeal, this one, I really feel like it restricted a lot of it through it being very much cinematic. What do you feel about that element of this, of how its cinematography and its editing, especially from someone who was a choreographer, is very much approaching this from a more filmic lens?
I thought you were saying I was choreographer.
No,
like,
he was. Bob Fosse was like a choreographer,
Yeah.
and yet he's coming at this from a much more less theatrical and more cinematic.
No, yeah, definitely after I, read about the fact that, this is all very diegetic, like that really complements it. Like you nailed it with the Nazi song example.
It's our time.
What was
whatever.
it? Tomorrow I'll Get My Freedom or something like that?
Yeah.
Yeah, really great song. And again, another one where it's like if you take the visuals out and just listen to the performance, it's like, oh, this is like a really uplifting song. I'd play this to motivate me. But the visuals of it, where the song itself doesn't change, like you don't really get like, like dark instruments going like as soon as you see like the swastika. It's just like the passion continues while you're being shown, Nazi youth persons singing passionately.
And that they're winning the crowd.
Yeah, and that's exactly what I was going to say next. Like the crowd starts standing up, singing along. You see a little 3-year-old girl like try to sing along. You see, some people in the crowd being disgusted by it. Michael York and Maximilian are kind of ready to leave.
But they also have a difference of opinion on it too.
And
because he's like, oh, you think you can still control them?
And you're just waiting like, okay, is there going to be a Nazi salute? And it takes a while, but you do get it.
Oh, you always have to get it. Yeah, it's something I very much was appreciative of with Cabaret, the film, that it very much utilized the lenses, the editing, the blocking to make this feel less of a stage production that's just been brought to the big screen and made it really worthy of being a movie. Like, this is one where I'm honestly like, how does a stage version do this? Like, I keep thinking about
it's
like
a curious thing, yeah.
The opposite way around of what you usually do, where you're usually like, oh yeah, I can see how the stage version would do this. But this one's, I'm like, I'm actually like reverse engineering. I'm like, oh, it's okay.
Yeah, it's probably not going to be that hard to do, but like just seeing how it complements the medium of film, it's like, yeah, that is interesting.
Now, let's talk about main characters, the people that we got to spend time with. A real slice of life affair for this, and an ensemble in a hidden way. Like, you're not expecting there to be like a little ensemble of characters.
Yeah, that surprised me.
They come and go. Like, Felix just disappears for a portion of the movie. Was it Felix?
Fritz?
Fritz.
Yeah.
Fritz. He disappears for a portion of the film, and then he comes back.
Yeah.
And he's like, I'm Jewish. And I'm like, oh, hello.
I'm back from my resolution.
I'm back for this part of the movie. And then once that's wrapped up, I'm gone. And we'll never hear about me or this woman ever again. And you're waiting. You're waiting for the grisly payoff will most likely come. And yet that's also the point. You don't need to see, that most likely them being out Jews in this location at this time, things are not going to go well.
We're just 2 Jews in Berlin a few years before Nazi Germany.
Yep, and it's already affecting her. They're already harassing her.
We've already had a scene of a bunch of Nazis going, Jordan.
And killed a dog.
Yeah.
Very upsetting. But
cute dog, by the way.
Characters. I guess let's talk about those smaller ones first before we get to our two main, to the surrounding. Fritz, what did you think of him as a character?
Yeah, a funny little character, especially early on. He is introduced as just reminding me, he's introduced to Michael York by Liza Minnelli as like, oh, he's a businessman and you can teach him English, right?
Yes.
Yeah.
Yes.
Yeah, so Michael York comes to Berlin to, what was it again, to
he's doing
some
like,
sort of university thing?
Yeah, he's doing like, his doctorate or whatever, like always, one of those things.
Something
like
about,
he's
linguistics
there,
or something.
Yeah. He's doing his university stuff, but it's very much not focused on. It's just something in the background.
Early
like
on, it's a big thing, and it's like, oh, you can teach these people English on the side. You can translate this book on the side. And Fritz is one of those people that comes along where it's like, okay, I'll tutor you in English to help you with your business ventures or whatever. And then he learns that Michael York has a wealthy daughter of a rich Jewish family. That he's going to tutor in English because she's kind of just beginning or something like that. And then his role throughout the film is a romance story with this other student of his. And he goes through a bit of a development where, he starts off like, oh, maybe I'll just marry into money. But then he genuinely falls in love with the woman and, he's very conflicted about that. So there was some humor to there.
Oh,
with that.
and I thought he had a great arc too, because at the start, at least I didn't know how to feel about him as a character. He felt opportunistic. I was wondering if there was an angle to his business that he was peddling. Like, I was waiting for, is he going to be somehow involved in Nazi stuff? Because he just oozed something about him, just something not quite right about him. But then we got to know him more, and we got to see him wrestle with the fact that he is changing. And is that possible? Can you change? And how much are you willing to sacrifice? And then we learn, like, he's actually like a very meek person. He doesn't know how to pounce. And then he, gets the balls and does this stuff. And we get to hear more about what he's like after he's changed from other people. And then when we get to see him again after his little vacation away from the film, he has changed and he doesn't know how to feel about it. And I liked him as a secondary character. And I thought he was quite an interesting mirror to a few other players in the film. Like you mentioned, there's that one guy who's like in one or two scenes, the one who's like writes dirty books.
Yeah.
That Michael York's has to translate.
His name was Ludwig?
Yeah. And you meet him fairly early on, and you feel like, oh, him and Fritz are this kind of same type of thing, where they're these people who come across as affluent and and
they're hiring Michael York services,
but really they're sleazy and duplicitous and they're gross, whatever. But they're different. Like Ludwig, let's call him. Like he becomes a Nazi. That's what happens to him. He just becomes a Nazi. He's just one
or at the
of
very
those,
least a sympathizer.
A sympathizer.
He's repeating their sort of rhetoric.
Well, here's the thing. Michael York would never say he's a sympathizer. He just he basically, without saying it, just calls him a Nazi. There is no beating around the bush. He gets beat up for that shit later on. But, and then obviously with Fritz, I feel like he kind of fills this role that then gets taken over by Maximilian. Like Maximilian comes in and he has the mustache and the slicked hair, but he's actually a rich go-getter who knows the languages and is actually all of these things that Fritz is aspiring to be at the start.
Yeah, they even look pretty similar.
Yeah.
But the way they hold themselves is very distinct.
And I'm curious to get your opinion on Maximilian as a character, but Fritz is, in my eyes, he wants to be this Maximilian figure, but then he actually grows a heart and a conscience and a soul. And that's the difference. Because Maximilian, how do you read this character? Do you think he was a good person? What are your opinions on him? Like, because he comes and then he goes. He just disappears, much like, again, mirroring her own father, this very important person who's going to be here, but then in a letter he'll be like, I'm not here. And that's what Maximilian does. In a letter, he's just not there anymore. What do you feel about Maximilian? He's just such an oddball.
He was also another roller coaster of the film that I really appreciated as it went along, because, when it starts off, the sense that the senses in your head are, looking at things that you've seen before. It's like, oh, okay, this is a, roadblock in the relationship. Like, our two main characters are, finally kind of together in this, like, end of first act moment. And now this rich guy comes along, and our very promiscuous female lead is spending all her time with him, is just bragging about all the fun things that she's doing with him. It's just like beating you over the head with it.
She's charmed by him.
And then you have the other side of Michael York just looking so displeased about the whole thing, being given like a lesser gift as kind of like an afterthought, you think. And it's like, okay, this is, an antagonist of the film if we're looking at it from Michael York's perspective.
She says that Michael York is jealous because Maximilian is the man that he wishes he could be. Everything that he could aspire to be, Maximilian actually is. Which is interesting as a comment.
And then, like, as you're about, like, 40% through Maximilian's screen time, you see him and Michael York starting to get a little bit closer. And you have I remember you have, like, that rowing scene where they're, like, kind of in tune with the way they're talking to Sally, to Liza Minnelli. And then you have the dance scene where, everything they all seem to be on the same page. And it's like, oh, okay, maybe this Maximilian guy's, not so bad after all, because there is sort of like an understanding that everyone's having. And then, when he does leave the film, you do kind of feel that absence in a different way to how you would have thought initially, where it's like, oh, the antagonist is gone, now the relationship can continue. It's like, no, this is actually, something missing in a way.
He grew to have feelings for both of them. Michael York's character at the start says that his romance and his sex life is nil. And that he doesn't prefer women, but he does prefer both. And then we see that play out in the feature itself. And we see him come out of his shell because of both of these characters, only for then it to be ripped away from him. But it's not just him. Like Liza Minnelli also, she feels like things have been ripped away from her because of what Maximilian has done is very similar to what her dad does to her regularly. But she also does this to other people herself. Like she's this weird character who will turn like that if she's in a mood. And it's a film in which you're spending time with unlikable people who are very likable. If you get what I mean by that. Like I, and you as well, we have a background in theater. We've done drama, and I've met a million Sallys. I know so many like her. And you know that they're annoying and that's self-absorbed and problematic and all this stuff, and yet they're charming and entertaining, and you want to spend time with them, and you want to listen to them, and you want to watch them do their thing, and maybe get swept up in it yourself. And that's what this really did. I just kept watching this, saying to myself, this is a film of very likable, unlikable people. Because I wouldn't want to spend time with any of them, and yet I do. It's that weird kind of friction in me where, like, all of them are despicable, but also not. There's nothing specifically that they do, but at the same time, there's just certain attitudes or certain behavior things. I'm just like, I don't know if I would want to spend time with you for that long. But they do a fantastic job with Maximilian. Like, he is a character that I still don't know how to feel about him. Like, was he a good person? Was he just there to have like a selfish fling love interest, like, and then just disappear? What happened to him?
Well, he does mention he's married, so he's unfaithful there.
Oh, of course. But yeah, I just I had a great time with that character. Also not expecting to, because, here's a love triangle. Oh, here's this. Oh, what's his agenda? But then things don't go in the exact way that I was anticipating. And then we got our two leads. What did you think of Sally, of Liza? Are you familiar with Liza Minnelli?
I've seen her in a couple of things. The only thing I can truly remember seeing her in was Arthur. She was the female love interest in that. And I think there might have been one or two other things, but it's just escaped. I think she was in Silent Movie.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, but I've only seen that film once. I can't quite remember her cameo in it. I'm assuming it was. But I remember liking her in Arthur. It's been a long time. So when I saw that she was in this, I'm like, oh yeah, I remember enjoying her in that other film I've seen. I'd like to see some more of her. I'm not too familiar with like her general reputation, but I feel like in recent years I've heard her as being like the punchline of a lot of jokes. Is there anything about her?
I don't know enough about her. I just know that she's like, very much a showbiz person, and she's the daughter of Judy Garland, who's like obviously huge. She sings and dances, and she's one of those, like, she'll sing and dance until she fucking faints, that type of thing. What I know her for primarily is a very poking fun at herself type role. She was in Arrested Development a bunch as the other Lucille, because the mother in Arrested Development is Lucille Bluth, but there's another Lucille character, and she's the other one. And they both hate each other, but they have that kind of like smiling as they hate each other type rapport. And her character is a very kooky, strange weirdo who suffers from vertigo. And there's a comment on one of the reviews of this. It was like, I'm surprised her getting on that chair didn't cause her vertigo to go. And I'm like, And her and Carl Weathers, he played himself in Arrested Development, their characters have like a weird little fling in that. It's so strange.
I was
but,
about to say, because a couple of weeks ago off podcast, you were telling me about Carl Weathers in that show and how he was also kind of poking fun at himself.
Yeah, because he wanted to not do Apollo Creed jokes. He wanted to make... His whole thing was he was like, what happens if I'm really cheap? And that's like the core of his humor. And like him and the other Lucille get on and he's like teaching her about his stew recipes, but other characters are assuming that they're having sex. He's like, I'm just making stew. And she's like, he's got this incredible stew recipe. It's just so silly. But I must admit, I haven't seen her in many things either. This is probably the thing I know her for. And it's the one, she's got a claim for and recognition for. It's probably the thing that is the biggest in her catalog. And I think she's fantastic in this. There's just with a character like Sally, who is annoying. She's very annoying. You need someone. It's just someone who can bring that humanity to the role, or else it will be only insufferable. Liza Minnelli, again, I don't know too much about her, but she plays this to a T. She's perfect. She has that melancholy in all of the scenes, even when she's being eccentric and funny. You feel like Sally has lived a life before you've watched the movie, and she will continue to live a life after you've watched it. And Liza Minnelli's like stage presence in the Cabaret, as well as just what Sally's like in between, is just captivating. Not to undersell how good Michael York is in this, but she is the reason that you're watching this movie. She's the one your eye is drawn to. Even if you find her character to be grating, she's just so alluring.
It's a type of character that, if done wrong, can be either 2 or 1-dimensional. And it's great that she would manage to make it 3-dimensional.
What were your reactions to Sally at the beginning and then throughout the film?
This is a character that, when they're introduced, they wear their personality on their sleeve. They are, I guess, in a more modern or different genre, you might see this kind of character as being like a manic pixie dream girl type thing, where it's like she's larger than life. She brings a lot of excitement to our very proper main character's life.
She screams underneath a train.
Oh yeah, I was literally about to bring that up. Like, she has got these little idiosyncratic quirks, like, screaming under a train to, get something out there, which is a good idea. I might actually try that sometime. But like you said, when things get serious, you do see like the humanity come out of her. Like, there are many examples in the film, but one that I've already brought up, it's like the first thing I brought up, the abortion scene at the end. Like, she plays through that scene, kind of to her character, where it's like, it's just a whim of the moment. But then as that scene goes on, you get all these close-ups of her face looking like desperate for like, please try to understand me. Please try to understand that this is just who I am, kind of thing.
She's a character who's aware that she plays a character. Because she's a performer, and then when she's not actually performing on the stage, she's performing still. She doesn't know all the time how to turn that off, and it upsets her.
And she has a lot of scenes with Michael York where, she kind of turns off that persona to, try to bring some more humanity to it. Like the scene where she tries to have sex with him the first time, where, he's not into it. Like, at first, she makes the joke at one point, it's like, oh, maybe you don't sleep with girls. And then, like, as soon as, she starts kind of either reading between the lines or starting to realize maybe there is some truth there. Like, she's completely sensitive towards him. They come to an understanding, and it's kind of like a really just mature way of going about things.
A film that I would highly recommend to our listeners, and we have covered it on the podcast, but her performance and her character reminded me of this. They are different, of course, but reminded me of Burning. There's the female lead of that movie who is very similar in my mind, of more modern, updated version, but that character who, they burn so bright and yet they're damaged and tortured underneath it all, but how much, like, they're playing a role, and these two men are chasing after her, but they don't understand her, but they do. Again, they're different, but I kept thinking about that during this as well. I kept thinking about her during this, just that kind of
Very,
character.
very different way of doing things, but there are similarities, now you mention it.
Yeah. It just popped in my mind that near the end of the film, I was just like, man, yeah, she really reminds me of her from Burning. So
Yeah, and you can kind of see like this kind of character in, I guess, a more typical, straightforward story. Like, you know, the development might be, you know, putting that behind you to lead yourself into a more traditional lifestyle. Like the plot for the last third kind of is leading towards like, oh, you know, she's pregnant and they're going to have a child and they're going to be a mother and father raising the child.
she doesn't even know if it's his.
Doesn't even know if it's his, but they have another really mature conversation where he's like made peace with that. And it seems like everything's going to go well. But then, you know, the climactic twist to all that is like she wasn't ready for that, and she tried to handle it the way that she knows how to, and it leads to, you know, a very, very bittersweet ending to the relationship.
And to give her character even more credit, he also wasn't actually ready for it. There's that moment where she's trying to connect with him on when they're laying down on the picnic blanket and he's just gazing up at the sky. He's so in his own head about the state of everything going on. He's so distant and detached. It's not just, oh, it's on her end. Both of them aren't ready. And that when she talks about that, you'll eventually grow to hate me conversation, it's not just her pulling that out of nowhere. You believe that would probably happen because these are two characters who have only paired up together because of these extraordinary circumstances. But are they actually right for one another? Would they make a good couple? Do they actually love each other?
Yeah, they make
The answer is we don't know. Yeah. And in this case, is that good enough? Probably not.
For the slice of their life that we see in the film, yeah, they are good. But you know, going forward,
but still volatile.
Still volatile, yes. But but still, yeah, going forward, like, can that last?
Everything about their relationship is complicated and compromised, highs and lows. But you still want them to be good at the end of the day. Brian, who is, of course, Michael York. Yeah. I mean, Michael York is a fantastic actor. I love Michael York. As stated, I haven't seen him in as much as I would like to, but I have seen him in a bunch of things. He was in The Three Musketeers. He was, Logan in Logan's Run. He was in an episode of Babylon 5. He was wonderful there.
I loved him in that, yeah.
He played it absolutely perfectly. Like a ludicrous premise, but he plays it seriously and brings dignity to the role.
He has great chemistry with one of the characters in that episode.
And then, obviously, we grew up with Austin Powers. Many people our age bracket know him for being Basil Exposition, in which, you know, Michael York's always had, like, funniness to him, but for the most part, before that time in his career and doing voice work and stuff, he would be fairly serious like he is in this. Like, he's never really that funny in this. Like, there's never any moment where I was like, oh, that's a Basil Exposition type Michael York thing. Like, there was no...
He has a couple of snarky lines. Like, of course, that's the one German word you'd be able to pronounce. And then, like, him saying that your paper and your beliefs are crap, sir.
No, exactly. But interesting you pulled those because I'm like, those were like fairly serious lines in their moment. Like the Nazi one.
Well, the fornication one though.
But he said it so like venomously, like when you're in a relationship and you're just making a jab. But it's British dry humor. But like what I'm saying is, in comparison to Austin Powers, where he's so ludicrous, like he didn't have any of that Basil-ness to him. Like, and I think that's, you know, obviously a compliment to him as a performer, but you know, for your sake, what was it like to see Michael York in a leading role in, you know, what was, you know, in his youth, probably at the more of the height of his career, not as the thing that you are more entrenched with him as an actor, which is being more of a funny guy.
No, I loved him in this. Like I said at the beginning of the film, it hits you over the head with like the style of the cabaret, and you know, it feels a little bit alienating. And then once he comes in, there's this kind of warm presence where it's like, okay, here's our audience surrogate. Here's him interacting with this world, and here's, you know, the world interacting with him in a mixture of, sensitivity of like, oh, you're not familiar with all this, so this is how everything works, and also like, this is what we're like. And seeing, his reactions to that and how he develops and becomes a part of this world.
He doesn't get, like, when I think back to this, it's not about the dialogue, it's about the reactions that he has, the facial reactions, the look of the eyes, the tilt of the head. His character is a foreigner in a foreign land, but he's accepting and welcoming of it to a point. Because obviously he doesn't accept the growing Nazism, but he wants to really live and breathe this culture, this world, this society, and he's so active in it, but he's still at a distance. Like, even when he's at the cabaret, he's always sitting at the back, like he's never up at the front, he's never behind the stage, he's always at a distance. And I think Michael York has a certain British coldness that works really well, mixed with a warmth that he has as an actor. Like, there's a lot of conversation now about, what actors should play what type of roles. Like, should straight actors ever play gay characters or whatever the case may be? And then that also has a lot of conversation about, like, well, you may assume an actor's sexuality because you don't know it, but then, there's all this. And I bring this up because I don't know anything about Michael York's life in that way. I'm pretty sure he's married and has children, but his character's bisexual in this. And there's that moment where he reveals that he's also having sex with Maximilian. He says, "So did I." And the level of just humanity that Michael York brought to that line delivery and all of the bits afterwards, I sat back in my seat being like, I'm embroiled in the character, but a part of me is like, wondered if he's actually bisexual because he played this so honestly. I was like, wow, like, I really feel like this is a real person, a real guy, and it made me question the actor. I'm like, wow, like, I don't know. And the thing is, it doesn't matter, because what I'm really saying is, I didn't expect to feel so much for him, because he's kind of at the start, a boring character. Like, he's there for the kooky things to happen around him, but he gets to a point where he's opening up in these ways that I found to be, especially for the time period and for, this elaborate musical or whatever. I was just so touched by Brian's story about his sexuality and about his self-discovery and about, standing up for what's right, like, even if it gets you beat up and things. Like, he only does all that shit to the Nazis because he's upset about his own personal life at the moment, that his self-destructive act is to start a fight. But he starts a fight with people who actually deserve it, which is interesting. But I just, Brian as a character, he's one that, like we keep talking about in this, he just snuck up on you. Like, that's the thing about Cabaret is it's got this this slow build effect about everything, with obviously the time period is taking place in, the politics of it all, but the characters, the music, the tone, all of that. And yet we start out this movie with such a slap in the face aggressive streak to it, and yet the rest of the time, it's this slow build, and yet we still have a lot of fast cuts, a lot of, abrupt mood swings. But yeah, I was just really taken in by Michael York's voice, his face. I just kept being won over by him over and over again. Where I didn't think about Austin Powers or Babylon 5 or any of that. I was just like, and I kept thinking to myself, man, why didn't Michael York get more stuff? He's just such a damn good actor. That's what I kept thinking about. But is there anything else you want to comment upon when it comes to Cabaret, the characters, any behind the scenes stuff, or any other bits of this film that you want to discuss?
We've covered quite a lot of it. Is there anything else? Don't know how much I have to say about it, but we haven't really talked about the female student, the Fritz's love interest.
Who's Jewish and rich, and She is the one who is at the forefront of the horrors that are going to unfold during the course of history. Her character doesn't get too much to do.
Yeah, you mentioned before, like, Fritz kind of leaves the film for quite a lot of it. Like, she's like double that kind of.
She gets more time during that period when he's not in it. Like, her description of him pouncing sounds horrific, but then it's kind of sweet. It's such a oddly handled scene, but I liked how oddly handled it was because she's talking to Sally.
I was about to say, yeah, who's
the reason he pounced.
She's got an interesting dynamic with Sally, where it's like, you know, the prim and proper versus you know, the crazy, wild, fun lady.
Yes. And the brutality of the film is literally at this character's doorsteps. Like these Nazis kill her dog, and they're saying the slurs outside of her gate, and Fritz has to make a sacrifice, not just for, you know, the obvious, like, oh, I'm a horned dog, now I'm settling down, but he has to out himself as Jewish in a country, in a time in which that could be a death sentence. And him talking about that and trying to explain that to characters that just won't get it, you know, like, they can understand to an extent, but like Michael York's been beaten up by the Nazi, he gets beaten up by the Nazis, but like he won't ever understand it the way that Fritz will understand it, or she'll understand it, or other characters will understand it. And yet Michael York is the most disgusted by the Nazis throughout the film. And yet what happens is he can just get on a train and leave.
Ironically, like, his disgust at the Nazis is depicted in a just very, you know, physical way, and that's the only reason why he gets beaten up. Oh, you fought with us. It's not you ideologically, it's just you messed with us. You hit our pamphlet and hit our flag.
There's a difference between disgusted and terrified. He's disgusted, they're terrified of the Nazis. And that's how the movie ends, with the cabaret goes on, but we see there's more Nazis in the club, distorted in a reflection, but there's more of them. At the beginning, there was just one, and he was getting kicked out of the cabaret, and then the person who kicked him out got fucking attacked and murdered. And throughout this, we keep seeing more of the Nazis increase and more of their violence increase and more of it being normalized. People just walk past a crime scene. Oh, that's happened.
Yeah, that one scene was like halfway through the film. I think it was during like the Maximilian arc, where they're driving through the streets and like it's this very grey environment where everyone is just standing completely still around a body. And the characters in the car just like commenting on it, and you get all these shots of, just no one is moving.
It made me think of Twin Peaks, that moment. There's lots of Twin Peaks moments like that.
If it was night, it would be like that Bobby scene in the season 3.
Yeah. But the film ends with, like we saw throughout the movie too, the cabaret is anti the Nazis. Like, they have their little musical numbers making fun of them.
Yeah, where the Nazis are like the dressed as cabaret girls.
But by the end, they're performing for them.
I was reading a lot of trivia that was saying like, oh, was the MC a sympathizer all along or something like that?
Yeah. Well, he's making fun of them throughout the movie. Like, he literally does a Hitler moustache from like fucking mud during the sexy, gross mud wrestling thing. And it's like very silly.
I think it cut to him smiling and nodding after the Nazi song.
Yeah. Well, that's exactly it. And then by the end, the cabaret is performing for the Nazis. And we have talked about the failures or comedic effect of a still image ending, where you just pause it on an image and then credits roll. We've had our laughs at movies that do that for comedic reasons, like, or failed attempts, like Cutting Class, or what was the one that I'm forgetting the name of?
Gnome Named Norm?
Gnome Named Norm, and the one that did a pause and then had more, which was
Terminal
Velocity. But this is an example of like the effectiveness of just stopping,
still image and silence, and just let it roll. You know what's happening here. You know what will happen. That's the beauty. We only see small moments of actual Nazis committing violence, only brief, but they're enough to linger, where at the end of the movie's looking you in the eye
and saying, you know what will happen after this.
Hmm.
And my jaw is still on the floor from just how much of a gut punch this movie gives me. It's just one of those things in which we've seen many different depictions, many different ways of commenting on, examining, deconstructing, criticizing, reviewing, telling the story of Nazism, of fascism, of what happened there. And it still works. Maybe for people like us who do have family backgrounds with this being Polish after all, but there's just something that still sends a chill down my spine with certain examples. I don't know if you get that yourself still or not. With like how often in media we've seen the Nazis be explored and be played around with and all that, but still there are those moments like with this being one of them where it still rattles me of just like, this is a thing that happened and will most likely and can happen again. That type of feeling. Do you get that? And did you feel like, how did you feel about how this movie was exploring that topic?
I did like that, for all that we are talking about and for as blunt as the film is about a lot of it, it does feel kind of, underplayed in a way because it is, the rise of the Nazis, and the ones that we do see are not, like full on SS yet. A lot of
they're
them
just brown shirts.
Yeah, they're just brown shirts handing out pamphlets in the streets, and in a really weird way.
Most of them are basically children or young men.
Young men, thugs kind of thing. And in a weird way, like the scene where they kill the dog and they're shouting Juden, 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 in a really dark way that almost feels like a just dumb prank that they're doing. They're not yet at the point where, the camps are a thing.
And I couldn't recall because the scene's so dimly lit and dark on purpose. Were those all just Nazi brown shirts, or were those just people?
It's hard to tell. It was very dark.
They're riling up everyone. Hence, we see people who were once just, normal or just degenerates that the Nazis would probably hate turn into something else.
Yeah, the weird guy who's like, I wrote this really artistic book. Oh, it's just pure pornography.
But by the end, he's a Nazi or sympathizer. Yeah. It's a lot to take in. Now,
aside from all that, though, it was just some style of
before we wrap this up fully and do I recommend Cabaret. Clearly.
Yeah, obviously.
Clearly.
When you said you had no notes, yes.
Now, we both own this on DVD. I own a copy of the DVD.
Here it is in my hand.
I found a little treat, a little surprise with this. Now, I will say the transfer that I had was terrible, so I had to watch it through another service. But I will keep this physical copy for a very interesting reason. Now, Bartek does not know. I've not told him.
Yeah.
Bartek has the DVD case in hand. I want you to open up the case because it included something, and this is... I did not know about this. This was a shock to me. I'd never opened this DVD. My wife found it at a video rental store that was closing down. Bought it.
Yeah,
so
buy any two, save $5.
So, Bartek, please open up and tell us all what you find in there.
Right, Ryan built this up last night. It's got a fun bonus, he said, and then I saw the DVD next to where I sit in the podcast. He's like, I want you to open it on mic. So
it's one of the benefits and joys of physical media.
Yeah, so you're going to hear in the microphone, I'm opening it, and now I'm going to look down.
Yeah, take it out. Yeah, describe it for the listening people out there.
So it is let me just see the other side for a second. Okay, yeah, it's just like a soundtrack list. So it is a little, poster, like pamphlet, the size of a DVD, where it says Cabaret at the top with a K. And the image is of,
please.
Is it the MC?
I think that's Liza Minnelli.
I can't tell if it's Liza Minnelli or the MC, but it's basically a shot of it's forming a swastika symbol, like a Nazi swastika of the two opposite sides of either end are like legs with heels at the end of them.
Yes, it's Liza Minnelli's outfit that she wears with the garters.
Yeah,
and, and her face in the middle.
Yeah, and the leg that is covering the top right and bottom left part of the swastika, in the middle part, which is white thigh, has a stretched out
like
double chin image of eyes closed, singing very widely, and because the image is stretched, the mouth looks very open.
Yes, and basically it's these four legs making a swastika. It's very arty. It's black and white with a red background.
Yep, and my favorite part, I only just noticed this
is
now.
This is why it's important.
Is that this is a Polish poster, because I'm saying Amerykański musical filmowy.
Yeah.
And I'm like, that's Polish.
Read the bottom.
Yeah.
Where
Original Polish poster art, 1973.
by happenstance.
Yeah.
I did not plan this. This was not a thing. We just got this from a video rental store, and yet, for some reason, an Aussie DVD has in it the original, like an image of the original Polish poster for Cabaret.
Yeah, I guess this is
Isn't that strange?
I guess this is the best poster that's ever existed.
I was waiting for you to pick up if you were going to read that or if you're going to see that there's a bunch of Polish on the front, and I was just like, when's he going to figure it out? And then, you figured out the way you did.
I was looking at the images of it.
And I would say, I think this poster is fucking rad.
It's pretty
so cool. Look it up, and maybe we'll include an image of it that we can find on our social medias, which you can find of Facebook and Twitter, Spit and Polish Presents. But this is the difference of owning physical media.
Yeah,
you can get
sure.
some negative stuff like I did with the poor aspect ratio and transfer, but then I'll keep this because of that inclusion. It's so beautiful. Like, I love it. And just like, why is there a Polish poster? Like, I would understand if they were like the original German one. It's like, okay, it's set in Germany, but like, Polish. Okay, like I opened it up and I saw that. It was on that side. And I was like, holy shit, this is a cool image. Then I saw Polish. I'm like, wait, isn't this set in Berlin? Is there Polish stuff in it? No. It's just by happenstance, this is including a Polish. And for us, as Spit and Polish Presents, very much appreciated.
Yeah.
And
compared to like the actual cover, it's like, Cabaret on the side. Like the back is more interesting.
Yeah. It's a wild experience of owning the DVD, and yours is just like a black one with white text, right? So at least the spine is. I don't know what the cover was on your DVD. I didn't see it.
I think the cover has Liza Minnelli on it, so it's a better cover than this one. Actually, hold on. I think underneath this gigantic $14.99 sticker. Okay, she's on the top of the thing, but she's covered by the sticker.
But yes. Now, talking about Poland.
I know Poland.
We're doing a Polish film for the next episode.
Ooh, is that the one that's been on the list for a few years?
On the Silver Globe.
Ooh.
There has now been a copy with English subtitles online that can be easily found by us two.
Excellent.
It is a film that I know nothing about other than it is Polish. It is in the Polish language, so we're going to be watching it with subtitles. Bartek can enlighten us on some little Polish eccentricities he may pick up upon when watching it, because Bartek knows Polish more than obviously I do. But
I read some of the words on that poster.
It is just because I looked it up, it is nearly 3 hours long.
Cool.
So be aware. It's 2 hours, 45 minutes. I just thought it would be good for you to know in case, you just were like, I'm putting this on. Holy shit. Yeah, it's one of those where if a movie's really long, I think it's beneficial to let either one of us know in case we're like, I was planning on doing something, but you have to make a night of this. So on the Silver Globe, I know nothing of it other than it's Polish film and it's well regarded.
Yeah, I'll give slight, information about like the recommender. Like this was recommended by the son of someone that I sometimes work with, and she got her son to write this quite a big list. I still have it in my room of a bunch of Polish films that he recommends. I haven't put all of them on the list, just this one so far. He put an asterisk next to the ones he especially recommends. He put 2 next to this one. That was the only one. So this is the big one from that list.
This is a biggie. So we've only done one other Polish film. This will be our second. And literally on this episode, we had a nice little Polish surprise.
Yes, that was a really cool Polish surprise.
Everything is going on. So thank you all so much for tuning in, and make sure to come back and hear our opinions on this Polish film. If you can find a copy of it for yourself, make sure to give it a watch and listen in to us talk about it. You can email us over at
spitandpolished@gmail.com.
Our social medias are I've already mentioned them, but you can follow us on there. hit us up on our social medias or our email for recommendations, for suggestions of films, or to let us know your opinions on things we have discussed here. We are on all of the podcasting sites available, and we're on YouTube as well. So make sure to leave a comment, rate and review the podcast, and share it around with all of your friends, family, and foes. That is it. That is all. We are done. We are done here. Clapping the hands. I'm never recommending a musical again for the year and then still say it was a year of musicals because we've done a good amount of them already.
I mean,
so
for each part of the recommendation cycle has chosen a musical.
Will that be broken? We have to wait for the next cycle.
How do you wait? The only way to break it is to undo an episode.
I guess so. Well, the next cycle of recommendations, will there not be a musical?
I'm not saying like all three in the cycle. I just mean like there has been one my choice, one your choice, one listening choice.
Oh, I see. I thought you meant like, okay, once we went through one cycle was you, one cycle was them, and then one cycle was me. Like, is that what you were I thought that's what you were suggesting. I don't know. I haven't done the numbers. I haven't done the maths on it all.
No, I think Lagan and Repo were in the same cycle.
Oh, tragic.
No, I did. No, yeah, I think they were.
They were. Soz. But until next time, listening people, remember to be kind to each other, or else you won't get a lovely Polish surprise.
Ooh, that's not a reference to Cabaret. A funny joke. Why isn't it Cabaret?
Why?
Stupid American. Is it American film? I guess. I don't know. That's the joke.